What's going on? Ryan Troy back with another video for you today. And on this video, I'm joined with Anthony Toglife. Now, you guys may know him from his YouTube channel. If not, I have a link below. But we also did a thrift store challenge a couple weeks ago that's on my channel as well. How you doing, Anthony?
Man,
Toglife.
I'm doing real good. I appreciate you having me on here, man.
No problem. So what I want to start doing now is a segment that I want to call Let's Break This Down, where I have different photographers and people like that, and we break certain conversations down. Okay. Now, if you haven't checked out, I had a interview, I guess you could say, that I did with my good friend D Rosa on basically how I started photography and everything like that. Now, it's a certain part on there where I said that I used to charge like $100 for events. And that was, what I used to do a lot. So, my good friend Anthony here, he went live today and he brought that up because he watched it as well. He brought it up and he spoke about how he feels like charging less like that could probably hurt photographers, like professional photographers, because they expect everybody to charge what that is. But see, I kind of disagree with that, and that's where we're going to break this down. So, Anthony, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
So, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this subject as far as charging, even if it's not $100, just something that you feel is not, like, is it a standard? Who sets the rules and all of that?
So this is what I think with people charging less. And I'm not naive to think that beginners or people that do it part-time are charging less. What I think it does to photography in general is I think it makes it more challenging, more difficult for professional photographers that are charging more money. Because if photographer A is charging $100 for 4 hours of work, photographer B is charging $500 for that same 4 hours of work. I'm not saying that the photographer that's charging that $100 is going to make it impossible for photographer B to charge $500. I'm also not saying that photographer B is not going to get any clients, because everybody's going to go to photographer A because they're 100. What I think it does for the market is that it makes it more challenging for photographer B, because now everyone does pricing and comparing. It's like when you buy something, you're going to compare that to what other people are offering. And if one person is offering this amount and someone's offering way less, it's going to make you at least investigate why that is. You might still go with the more expensive option, but it's going to make you investigate why it's less. When you have photographers that are charging that $100, it's going to have photographers B's customer base at a minimum looking at the people that are charging this lower amount and saying, why are you charging so much more when they're charging this? And it just makes the job a little bit more difficult for photographer B, because now they're having to essentially convince their clients, and I use that loosely, but convince their clients why their stuff is worth $500 when this client is only charging $100. Sometimes they might be able to see it in the quality of work, because sometimes your photographer B, like, their work may be significantly better than photographer A, so it's a given. But sometimes you have photographer B that honestly isn't that great at photography, but they're really good at marketing and business, and their
Okay.
work might not look much different than photographer A. So now it's just like, well, why are you charging $500 and you're $100? I just think the $100 people, it just makes the job harder for full-time photographers. I do know people disagree with that. I think you might, maybe somewhere
Right. I want to jump
in there
in. I
you
have a
might
couple
disagree with.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to. So, are you saying basically that, all right, so we're calling the $100 event photographer A, correct?
Yes.
Right. And
Right.
we're calling let's just put a number on it. Let's just say 500. Charge whatever you want to charge out there. Well, we're going to get to what you should be charging, but whatever you charge. So that's A and that's B, correct?
Right.
Now, do you feel, because it seemed like you said B may can market itself better, but it doesn't mean that his work is better than A, correct?
Correct.
And then in a lot of cases, probably most cases, B's work is way better than A, right?
Yeah.
Because usually A is Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say, obviously, like, it's one of those things. Like, there's not a hard number, but I do think photographers that tend to charge more money, in general, they're charging more money because their skill set is better, their ability is better, and their gear is better. Now, that's generalizing it big time. I get that. But
Right.
in general, like, that's really what it is. And that's why they're able to charge that amount. But there's also photographers that are just really good at business, really good at marketing, and their work isn't much different than the photographer charging $100. And that's not to say like that the photographer charging $100 is crap. Like, they could be really good, but they're just getting into the game. And
Right.
so they don't really have the experience and the client base. So yeah, they're just trying to start off. So I'm not trying to say like photographer A, like their work is trash. But yeah, photographer B, sometimes their work isn't much better than photographer A, but they're just really good at marketing and selling, and people buy their product.
Okay. So this is all right. So this is how I see this, because I have no problem with photographer A, because I look at it like this. So let's say you have, I'm trying to think of an Applebee's. Let's say you have Applebee's, right? Now, Applebee's food may not be up to par with a 5-star restaurant. And you probably could go to Applebee's, spend way less, and get way more full. Okay.
Yep.
I see that as photographer A and photographer B. I feel like it is a space for both. Now, if we're talking brands like, let's say Nike, and then let's say Fruit of the Loom, as far as t-shirt, you could get some Fruit of the Loom shirts that have about the same quality as the Nike shirt. But because of the Nike brand and the marketing, you're going to pay more for that, and they're about the same. So the reason why I feel there's nothing wrong with having the Fruit of the Loom, there's nothing wrong with having the Applebee's and stuff like that, is because it's all on you, on how you price yourself. It's all on photographer B as far as how he market himself to bring better quality, that the $100 would never matter. It would never be a thing. And it's not just you, because you didn't touch on it like a lot of other people do. I see a lot of people, especially on Instagram, that feels like if you sell yourself short, you make it hard on all type of other photographers. And I just strongly disagree on that, because I see people that do work cheaper than me, and I see people that don't go to them. It's more than just your quality of work. And you know this, because look, me and Anthony, we are both full-time photographers, right? This is our profession. So you know that, because you know that you may have photographer A, as we call them or whatever, that don't have that professionalism, that don't have, all of that, the professional website and all of this other stuff. So people kind of know what it is that they go into. And I get a lot of clients from people that experimented with photographer A. Photographer A, I feel, brings better customers to us, because they got one thing with A, and they don't want that again. Even if it's not just the quality of the photo, every single thing that I let people know that I offer is already such a big upgrade from A, that they're willing to pay the extra. So sometimes you kind of need an A. You need that bar when you have people that's not professional and don't really understand what they're supposed to expect from B. They need to go to A sometimes. You need to do that.
So I gotta say, man, rock solid point. Rock solid point.
Okay.
Like 100%. People, I say this all the time. Like, people will be like, "Oh, I don't need this. I don't need that." You don't know until you compare it to something else. You can look at an image and be like, "This image is the best image I've ever seen," until it's next to an image that's 10 times better, and you realize what that image could have been, and then you're just like, "Man, I didn't realize that was even possible." So I 100% agree. Like, the people going to photographer A, you're going to have two buckets. You're going to have people that are looking for that $100 for 4 hours, because that's their budget. Like, that's what they want to pay. Right. Then you're going to have the people that are saying, well, photographer A is 100, photographer B is 500. I'm not sure why he's 500. Let me try this photographer A and see what he's all about. They go to that photographer A, they get the product back, and they're just like, I see why it's $100, and I see why he's charging $500, and yeah, that'll bring them to us. So that's a totally valid point. And I also think just because like someone is charging less, like I'm a firm believer that it's like that doesn't really necessarily impact me directly, because someone that's looking for $100 work isn't who I'm targeting. Like that's not my target audience. That's not who I'm marketing towards. Like I'm not trying to get the people that have $100 budget to spend $500. Like I'm catering to the people who value photography and what I'm bringing to the table, and they're okay paying the money. So I don't think that like the $100 photographer necessarily steals my business. The point that I will remain on is that like people doing the $100 work, they sometimes can make it a little bit more, like, I don't even want to say like more difficult or more challenging, but it makes me to a degree have to go the extra mile to separate myself from the $100 photographer. Because like I said, sometimes like the $100 photographer still has good work. Like,
Right.
you know, it's like they might be really good. Like they could have been doing photography for 10 years, but they're just getting into it. They don't have a portfolio yet, so they can't come out the gate charging $500 because they don't have any work to show anybody, right? So sometimes like their work is really good. So if their work is really good and my work is really good, someone's looking at it and saying, well, man, I don't, and again, you know, like I said in my live, like clients don't necessarily see photography the way that we do. We can look at stuff and we can find 5 things that are like, that image isn't good, or that image looks low quality because of these 5 things. Our clients might not see that. They might just look at the image with the client eye and just look at them both and just be like, man, they both look really good to me. So it just makes me have to work a little bit harder to be able to get those clients that are on the fence. You got clients that you don't have to work that hard on because they value what you do and they're going to spend the money. Then you have clients that are well under your price point that you're never going to get them, so you don't even waste any time with them. But then you got those ones in the middle, and you do try to sway those people in the middle to come over to you, you know? So those are the ones that I think I was really talking about in my live, is that those ones that are in the middle, these people that are charging $100. Now imagine if the people that were charging 100 were charging 300 or 400. Now the photographer B over here that's charging 500, there's not a lot of persuading that they have to do. At this point, they're kind of in the same area. So it really just comes down to the preference from the client. Which photographer does the client like more? But you're not really trying to sell them on why you're worth 5 times the cost of this other photographer. So that's just how I look at it. It's like if these photographers value their time more, because at the end of the day, it's like, man, $25 an hour to go and shoot. And that doesn't even include your time coming back to your computer, going through the images, doing whatever editing you're doing, and then delivering. Like you're putting all that time. I mean, that $25 an hour, by the time all is said and done, you're probably not even making minimum wage per hour with all the time that you're putting in. So it's just like, imagine if these people were charging if everybody was charging $200 or $300, that would be the standard. That would be the base. No one would fret over paying $200 or $300 because you couldn't get it any cheaper than that. So that's what I would just like to see, is instead of having this bar where it's low, let's just raise the bar and everybody's kind of more in the $200 or $300 range, and that becomes the baseline, that becomes the standard, and then everybody wins. The people coming into it win. The people that are already in it win. We all win. I guess the consumer doesn't win because they're paying more money, but you know, everybody wins.
So I'm going to wrap this up because I don't want this to get too long. I want these bite-sized, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I am going to just, it's not even combat. It's a lot of things you said I agree with, but it's another point that I want to hit that you even brought up. And it's just the fact that, let's say, when you are new, it is already hard to get clients because it's so many people that have been doing this already. So it's hard when you're trying to learn and things like that. I've shot a wedding for free before, just because 2 reasons. One, I wanted that experience. Shooting a wedding is an experience. unlike any other thing you can shoot in photography. I try my hardest not to shoot weddings because it's stressful for me.
Yep.
But some people really love shooting weddings. So
Yep.
one, I wanted to get the experience, and two, I wanted it for my portfolio. I wanted to be able to say, look, I shot this wedding, look what I did. Because if you're new to photography and you are trying to get a client that wants a wedding, what people that want weddings, they want to see work that people have done. And if you don't have anything, they may go to, somebody else. So that's the reason why I feel I don't want to discourage new photographers to not charge less. I want you to charge less, because at the end of the day, if this is a passion for you, just like me, I can do this for free. So when I was charging $100, it was because it still was a passion for me. So it's like I'm getting paid to do something that is a passion for me. So when you're starting out and you're fresh, charging cheaper than professional, photographers, it's not, in my opinion, it's nothing wrong with that, because you gotta build that up. You gotta, be able to adapt to your environment with, lighting situations and things like that. And you may not want to do that for free.
I gotta ask you a quick question though. Ask you a quick question. Would you charge so now that you're a full-time photographer and this is
Right.
essentially what pays the bills, would you still do $100 events, and why or why not?
Okay, so great question. So there are people that I'm close with that will ask me if I would do their event, and just because I'm close with them, I'll say, I'll do it for free, just tip me. And that's like my favorite line for somebody that I'm real cool with, saying, just tip me. And that way, I gauge how much you think I'm worth, because just tip me, I never got less than, I would say like $75 from a just tip me. A lot of times it's family members, real close friends. So I never got like less than $75 from a just tip me. But if it's not like a family member, then you can kind of gauge as to far as like, all right, well, are you going to give me $200? Are you like, what it is? So yeah, I pull up to places with my camera all of the time, and I shoot for free, but I just really love it. I want to say this one thing, and then I'm gonna try to get up out of here. The thing is, if I could remember this one thing, because I can't remember it anymore.
The struggle is real when you got a thought and then you start talking.
Yeah, and then I start talking, I mess my own self up. So yeah, man. So, sheesh. I mean, I guess that's just what it is, man. People that are new into this space, that's what I want to say. I remember. Okay, perfect. So this is what I want to say. I personally, it took me seeing what other people were making from photography before I adjusted my price. Because like I said, because it's a passion, me just seeing that, oh man, this person makes this much from doing this, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I can raise my price up. Sometimes you kind of need to find that out, because one thing about $100 photographer is this: $100 photographer may do work for a very long time and feel like this is not worth it. But that's an experience that $100 photographer has to have, because either way it goes, you can't just shoot, snap your fingers, and then photos are edited. You're putting in that time. So if you feel it's worth it for you to keep doing that, then by all means do it. But eventually you will get tired of charging less and spending a week on photos or however long you spend and be like, man, I didn't really get anything out of this. Yeah. So I think that's a good.
I know you're trying to cut it. Maybe you have to cut this into two parts, because I just want to give my thoughts on, to answer back to what you just said, because I'm the opposite. I would not today. I would not do $100 session. Like, obviously for like my family, that's different. Close friends, I mean, we're talking like it would be very few that I would do something significant for free. Like definitely close friends. Yeah. Like my buddy, he just had a baby last year. I mean, I did, maternity stuff for him. I went to the hospital and shot for him. I did the baby shower, the gender reveal, all that stuff. Obviously I did all that stuff for free because that's like my little nephew. But outside of that, I'm not taking any $100 jobs. And here's why. And this is the only reason why I wanted to say this, because I at least wanted to put this perspective out there. For the amount that I charge for my photography, if I were to take a client, and I'm like you, I genuinely love photography. Like, I love to shoot. I love everything about photography. Like, it runs through me. I just love photography. But doing photography as a business, I'm not a cheap photographer. I'm definitely not the most expensive in the LA area, but I'm not cheap. If I do a job, I take a client and I charge them 100, and we're just using the same numbers just to keep it easy. But all of my other clients, I'm doing 500. What do you think that's going to do to my client base if they find out that I did the same exact thing that I did for them, but I did for another client for a fifth of the price? Now, yeah, there could be circumstances. It could have been who knows what on why I did that. But the thing that I have learned the most over the years, and it's an unfortunate thing, but it is the thing, is that perception is reality. And even though it could have been, this person was down on their, whatever the reason was, your client base can look at that and say like, man, I paid $500 for this. This client paid 100. I would not want to segment and alienate my customer base that way. It's like my prices are what they are. And it's like you either pay them or you find another photographer. And I know for photographers getting in, that's tough because you don't want to lose business. You want every client that you can get. So whatever money you're getting, some money is better than no money. And I think that's one of the hardest things for me to counter is to say, yeah, I get that. And I know like if bills are due and you need money, you got to do what you got to do. But in doing these smaller jobs, you can put yourself into a hole, because if you become known as the photographer that's charging $100 for this stuff, how do you ever get to a point where you're charging $500? You like the longer you go charging these smaller amounts, the harder it makes you to get out of that hole. So for me, it's like when I first started, yeah, I did free stuff. What I do discounted stuff, like I do no discounts really. It's like if it's someone that is referred to me from like someone really close. I mean, like I just did a headshot session a couple days ago. I gave her a discount. It wasn't anything crazy, but I gave her a discount because it came from a really good friend of mine. But for the most part, I don't do discounts. I don't do stuff that's any cheaper than what my price is. It's like my price is my price. And it's like you either pay it and we work together, or you don't and you find another photographer. Because I don't want my customer base to know that I'm basically negotiable to where it's like, oh, well, for client A, you did it for 500. For client B, you did it for 100. Can I get it for 200? Can I get like, how do I say, nope, you got to do 500? Well, why'd you do it for 100 for this one? And then that client that I did it for 100, I'm not even getting any good word of mouth, because they're going to be like, oh, I charged 100. So who are they going to send my way? Clients that want it for 100. How am I going to get this word of mouth and say, I know I charged your friend 100, but it's actually 500 and that's what I'm charging you? I don't even get any referral word of mouth out of those $100 clients like today, like doing like what I'm charging now. So that's why I wouldn't do that today. It's like you either pay my price or you find another photographer, and I'm okay with that.
Right. So I think that this is a great place to end this. Listen, obviously me and him, we could keep going, but like I said, bite size, and maybe one day we'll go live. And then when we go live, we can really go into it. We can get, your comments and stuff like that. But definitely, I guess we'll put question of the day is, what about you? How do you feel about this subject? You let us know in the comment section below. Yes. And once again, Anthony Talk Life, he will be linked as well. Make sure you go subscribe to his channel, and we'll see you in the next video.
Peace.
Peace.